to splice DNA, to genetically engineer plants to have properties that we want to grow them. We've managed to accelerate particles to over 185 million miles per second, 99.99% of the speed of light. We've managed to launch an object 10 million miles to Mars and land it on the surface within 3 meters of its intended target. And all of these different branches of sciences have had such monumental successes and triumphs in the last hundreds of years. These same scientists that have done that, the same scientific method that allows us to do those things, has failed us so dramatically in the age of the Earth that not only are we a little wrong, but we're wrong by something along the lines of 6 orders of magnitude. It's like saying, no, the distance from New York to San Francisco isn't 2,600 miles. It's 13 feet. That's how wrong they're saying all of science is. Not one field, not one line of evidence. All of the scientists working on independent projects, independent lines of evidence, are wrong to such a massive degree that it's laughable that they could call what they're doing truth. That's the way I want to frame this discussion right here. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about good science versus bad science. We're talking about 2 different worldviews. Not the worldviews they proposed in the last debate. This is not atheism versus Christianity or atheism versus belief in God. This is 2 worldviews. One that says, we know the way the universe is, and any evidence that is contrary to that must be discarded. And another worldview that says, if we're wrong, the evidence will show it, and we must adjust with the evidence. Now, you heard him characterize our position as just that, and you heard us characterize their position as just that. So how can you tell who's right? Well, think about this, and then I'll close. They're not proposing that scientists are wrong on general relativity, or on quantum physics, on entanglement, or any of the other bizarre, seemingly counterintuitive conclusions that science has come to in the last 100 years. They're only objecting to the specific conclusions that seem to conflict with their model of a young Earth. That's all.
First of all, I'm not really keen on the word micro-macro because of the fact it isn't the free rider effect, but let's look at what Darwin tried to do. In 1859, he basically set up a straw man argument, assuming the fixity of species. Now, the creationist model doesn't believe it. We believe that God created after its kind. So this is important, but the fact of the matter is that in what we see, the fossil record is that we see abrupt appearance. When we respect the fossil record, we see the abrupt appearance of fully formed animals. That's what we see in a fossil record. We don't see incipient stages of a half a wing, half a bird. So first of all, the creationist model teaches you're going to find in a fossil record abrupt appearance of all the different fossils. That's exactly what we see. Thank you. You're not going to read it for me. Oh, you know what? Let me take this. Let me use this right here. Thank you. All right. I said problems. That's because of the fall. Okay. Okay, now, first of all, interesting enough, we brought up the moth. I'm sorry, I'm going to go for a tangent, but the moth, check his research, Kettlewell research, he glued those moths on the tree. You knew that. Okay, fine. The point is that it's a moth. Birds, finches, they're finches. Big deal. Fruit flies. They irradiated fruit flies for 50 years in the laboratory. What happened? They got fruit flies with 2 wings, 4 wings, no wings at the call. Big deal, it's a fruit fly. Okay, the point is, the macroevolution model which I'm going to discuss doesn't explain how you get the increase of information. I have no problem with the fact that you get different types of birds, or different types of mosquitoes, or different types of moths. It's still a moth. That's not evolution. Not like we're talking about. We're talking about creating a separate kind of animal, both from a mammal to reptile. We don't see that. We have to imagine that. Now, quote here. A major problem. How natural selection operates at the molecular level is a major problem in evolutionary biology. And the fact of the matter is, again, is that natural selection of it by itself is not a mechanism that's going to increase order. If you look at example, let's look at breeding experiments. Okay, would you say that changing from a Great Dane to a Chihuahua is natural selection? Yes. Does it have more information? And all the breeding experience, you see what's happening. It's evidence against evolution. Why? Because the animal has less information. A Chihuahua can never be a Great Dane. It's going in the wrong direction. And that's what breeding experience is showing us. It doesn't show us what we're looking for. Keep going. Keep going. Now, mutations. First of all, humans are now subject to over 3,500 mutational disorders. Mutations harm 1,000 times more than they help. Matter of fact, the way things go right now with mutation genetic overload of humans, my concern is that we aren't even going to make it out of the next century. The bottom line is mutation is not this mechanism that's going to go forward. Mutations are deleterious and harmful, and I don't know of any good mechanism. I don't know of any good mutations that increase information. I don't know of one mutation that increases information. That's the problem. If we're going to have to believe in evolution, not revolution, going from one kind of animal to another, we have to show an increase of information. Next slide. I'm not saying beneficial mutations are impossible. Rather, the price one has to pay to get that least beneficial mutation is too high. To conclude, next. To conclude, the two main forces of evolution espoused by neo-Darwinism, natural selection and random genetic mutation, cannot account for the sudden emergence of so many new genetic forms. And only the creation model can actually solve that, because the creation model says everything was formed, it was very good. And then we have decay. It's going in the opposite direction. Evolution, right now we have the second law of thermodynamics is in effect, and everything is falling apart. Fossil evidence. Next. Okay, well, bottom line is that you made a point about billions of fossils in a species. We don't know that. That's an assumption. But the bottom line is that we do know is we have an abundant amount of fossils, which we agree. There's an abundant amount of fossils that we can look at. Next slide. The fossil, okay. When it comes to the billions of fossils and the sedimentary rocks, creationists and evolutionists disagree concerning their origin. How do you go from life to non-life? How do you go from one kind of animal to another kind of animal? And what killed them? The fossil record. The fossil record has always been a problem, macroevolution. Why? Because the fossil record has always shown the absence of transitional forms and the abrupt appearance of complex life. Stephen Jay Gould, Niles Eldridge, Stephen Stanley, Valentine, the list goes on and on. I give you dozens of evolutionists who will tell you that the fossil record is an embarrassment for the evolutionary model. But, again, it's the only game that counts, so we have to accept it. The fossil record extracts life. One of the most difficult problems in evolutionary paleontology has been the almost abrupt appearance of the major animal groups, classes, and phyla in full-fledged form. Cambrian and Ordovician periods. Again, these quotes can be multiplied over and over and over again. Again, keep going. Cambrian explosion. If we're going to get evidence for evolution, where do we start? We start at the pre-Cambrian period, where we get single-celled creatures. We go to the Cambrian period, and this is an embarrassment to the evolutionists, and they know it. Okay, we have an abrupt appearance of almost every single phylum. And this quote here says, it is considered likely that all the animal phyla became as distinct during or before the Cambrian, for they all appear fully formed without intermediates connecting one phylum to another. And what you find in the fossil record is an oldest bat fossil. It's a bat, so-called umpteen million years ago from the evolutionary time scale, it's still a bat. You get a dragonfly fossil and a fossil record, it's still a dragonfly. It forgot to evolve. You got the origin of anthropods. They go all the way back in time, they're still anthropods. There's no intermediates. Same thing with the origin of the fly. Same thing with the origin of the flea.